Master Rajiv Kumar Bhatia, once again reflecting on the key themes in focus. In the beginning of the program, you'd referred to a certain report. There's also an Oxfam report that has come in, which is looking at the economic inequality prevalent in the world and looks at data from the previous years and says that the inequality, in fact, has expanded, it has increased. The rich have become richer in the traditional manner, the poor have become poorer. The billionaires increased their wealth by about 13 to 16% in the past year. In such a context, how successful, how effective has an organization like the G20 been, which is perhaps at the most first tasked at looking at the economic challenges facing the world?
Well, I think the verdict has to be mixed, one on that. G20 does not hold a magic baton, which, using it can resolve the world's problems. If it did, it probably would have done so by now. Essentially, it is a collective forum of the developed and developing countries, emerging economies as well, in order to focus on the challenges, and challenges obviously vary from time to time. There was a time of physical crisis, then COVID, and now geopolitics, which is impacting on the collective decision making by the government. In fact, some of us, when we argue in our writings that G20 is very good at discussing problems and is excellent at producing very long documents expounding on the situation in the world, but when it comes to implementing the decisions, this is where G20 needs to work harder. So I would basically say that it was designed initially not as a decision maker, but as a forum where the top leaders would discuss things informally, develop consensus, and then they will go back home and try to translate or incorporate those decisions into the national decision making. But now things are different. Now G20 has become even more representative. I did a calculation and I found that roughly 100 countries are now represented in G20. 55 of African Union, 27 of European Union, and the rest of them. So out of 193 countries in the world, 100 countries are represented by G20. This is something significant. So frankly, if they were to decide, to come to your central point, as to what is the blueprint for not eliminating, but reducing poverty in the global economy, they can do something significant. And yet the issue is the divide between the North and the South, and we have discussed that before.
Indeed. Professor Dubey, we've spoken about the notable absentees from this year's summit, including President Trump. The other notable absentees, if I may inform our viewers as well, would be Argentina's President Javier Milei, Russia's Vladimir Putin, China's Xi Jinping, and President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico. Talking about China, we saw that President Xi took part in the Indonesia summit in 2022. He skipped the New Delhi summit in 2023. He went to Rio for the last year's summit, and this year he's again absent. Is it by design or default? What's the rationale for him deciding to attend a summit or skip a summit?
I think leaders do choose where they have major interest when they go. In this case also, it's not comparable to United States because United States is not participating at any meaningful level, whereas all other countries are participating not by the head of a state, but by some very important dignitaries. So I think the presence over there is not so important because China is participating in the summit. Also, as I said earlier, that these are forums where you discuss the issues that are of common interest to the world economy and also reach some kind of understanding. They are not the deciding body and body that takes action like WTO and others. So I think if, as the Chinese Premier said, that he has reduced his foreign visits, might be correct also. But I think we should not take it as something that is a reflection of China looking down on South Africa or this summit in any significant way.
Ambassador Bhatia, we understand that debt distress continues to be a major challenge for developing countries, and especially given that South Africa is hosting in the African continent, this problem is more pronounced. Now, you mentioned that G20 does not have the power to dictate terms to the world, but does it have the power to influence change as far as very critical multilateral organizations are concerned? From the UNSC to the WTO, the manner in which global financing order manages, the UNSC, the security order works. Can the G20, as it has done in the past in its statements at least, can it influence that change to be able to reform these institutions?
Yes, certainly. I think we need to appreciate how G20 actually works. There are two major tracks, as we know, the finance track and the Sherpa track. Finance track is the original, the nucleus or the backbone of G20. This is where the finance ministers and central bank governors sit. So whatever they decide, they have the ability then to take those ideas into the IMF and World Bank and WTO and the rest of them. I think that is very significant to remember. The Sherpa track is the additional, the new one, the add-on kind of forum where everything other than the financial issues are discussed. So they have the ability, but while they keep talking about even reform of the UN, somehow the political will to actually put into effect does not seem to be very strong. But if you allow me just for a minute about the absentees, if I could just come in, I think quickly. Argentina, obviously looks like
Trump's
sympathy
camp follower
of the US.
Yeah.
Russia was never expected.
Fair
The
enough.
country is at war, and Mr. President Putin is not traveling anywhere at all. Mexico, we all know they have gone through a very tough time.
Indeed.
The president personally, and then all the political agitations, etc. China, I agree with Professor Dubey, need not be read much. Sometimes president gets represented by the premier, but some people might say that this is a nice little gesture to the US. We have been hearing about the G2, ever since the last meeting between President Xi Jinping and President Trump took place. So even if it is not intended, I think our American friends will be pleased that President of China too will be absent from Johannesburg.
No, why I ask this question, Ambassador? Because I can understand Xi Jinping not wanting to come to New Delhi for obvious reasons. But South Africa?
They are very close, and yet, the decision is not to come. So I'm not a China expert.
Sure.
There may be something holding him back in Beijing.
Fair enough.
But some people are bound to read in this a message that it is a little friendly gesture to a friend.
Indeed. Again, on the question that Professor Dubey was making, Ambassador, we spoke about IBSA at some length.
Yes.
Is IBSA, India, Brazil, South Africa as a grouping alive and kicking? What's the rationale for having an IBSA today given the geopolitical flux that we're seeing around us? What purpose is it serving, or does it intend to serve?
It's a very interesting question. I've seen the he-days of IBSA when I had the opportunity to serve as your High Commissioner in South Africa. The basic rationale of IBSA, as you pointed out earlier in your commentary, it's a forum of three democracies from three different continents, and they were doing very well. The cooperation and coordination in the first 6-7 years was rising rapidly. Then something else happened. It was the geopolitical dynamics which led to create BRICS, and once BRIC to BRIC was added South Africa and it became BRICS. After that IBSA began to be somewhat neglected, but people have not forgotten it. The members have not forgotten it, so they keep from time to time injecting some energy, some health into it. I'm very happy that the summit even though it's informal summit on the sidelines, is taking place. I think this conveys the message that one of the original mini-lateral forums of democracies is still alive and kicking. I think they can make it a bit stronger, a bit more visible.
Institutionalized maybe?
Yes, although there is…
because it's a very loose grouping, no secretariat as such, so and leaders meet off and on, so there's no design or the push given to the
No,
grouping.
you are right, Ramesh, but there is a reluctance on part of the governments to institutionalize these groupings. For example, on BRICS also there is this thing that we must have a secretariat, even G20 a secretariat.
Right.
But largely the governments believe that this is the informal approach is a better approach because and they don't want to expend it too much.
Right.
So that is where we are today.
Indeed.
Right. Professor Ajay Dubey, we've seen in the past years the increasingly important role that India has been playing in sort of representing the voice of the global south in the G20 grouping. In its own presidency, of course, it happened in a big way. There were voice of the global south conferences that took place. Is there a certain wish list that India would have as Prime Minister now has reached South Africa? What would it seek to achieve? What would it like to see in the final statement in whatever manner it comes out eventually?
In fact, it is a very right question. India would like to communicate that the G20 must address the issue of inclusivity. As you pointed out earlier, the rich are becoming richer, poor are becoming poor. So it's the solidarity with the global south that will convey to the developed countries' leadership that their prosperity cannot stand alone, it has to be shared. And therefore, the global south is speaking the same language, is speaking with solidarity, and its voice and its issues should not be undermined. That gets into the final declaration or summary, whatever comes out from there.
Ambassador, would you like to add something to that about India's priorities at the summit?
Prasar Dubey has spoken well. I think I would like to highlight, India is fully committed to the concept of G20s, and in that context, obviously, sometimes we say that whatever we did during our presidency has impacted those who followed, but we are not being insensitive either to Brazil or to South Africa. It is about continuity, and in that context, I think all the measures to improve the international economy, measures to ensure debt sustainability for the poorer countries, measures that bring in some more climate finance so that technology transfer to the developing countries could take place properly. Certainly, digital transformation, which is one of the key planks of India's development diplomacy today, we would be very happy to see that that gets reinforced even here. And then above all, food security. I think we sometimes do not realize how lucky we are in India that our food self-sufficiency is there, but look at Africa. It has so much land and water and it still imports much of its food from abroad.
It reminds me, Ambassador, that International Year of Millets also sort of coincided with India's presidency of the G20.
Absolutely. So I think food, energy, water, digital, the general, but above all, I think given the commitment to group G20, I think India will do its best to make sure that it comes out as a strong, effective body. That is the bottom line.
Indeed. Professor Dubey, in the lead up to the G20 summit, there has been some commentary about the need for India to re-engage Africa as a whole by hosting the next edition of the India-Africa Forum Summit. Your thoughts on the need or necessity of India reinventing or reinvigorating its ties with the African continent as a whole, and could the G20 summit in South Africa play a useful role to that end?
I think it could play an important role, but the issues of engaging the entire Africa is a larger issue. India-Africa Forum Summit that we started in 2008. Starting from that, we had 3 summits, very successful summits, but we have not moved beyond these 3 summits to organize the 4th one because of COVID and several other reasons. And now that's an issue that one has to relook. Also learn from the last 3 summits, the way we engage Africa under Banjul formula, the way we gave importance to African Union, which budget around 65% of its budgets are funded from outside, having prime place in Banjul formula. And also the fact that only 10 countries have around 90% of our trade in Africa, and many times they are not engaged through forum summits. So engaging South Africa, engaging Angola is something that we are trying to do, and we should try to do, because South Africa is an important member of African Union as well, and it can support India's bid to reorganize the 4th summit, India-Africa Forum Summit, at a very larger level rather than 15 or 16 countries, which the Banjul formula under African Union leadership provides.
Right. Ambassador Bhatia, you mentioned in your intervention about climate justice that India could push the idea for. Another global summit, COP30, has been underway. I think today is the concluding day in Brazil. Another unfortunate thing would be that it made news more for the tragic fire that broke out than a real outcome. Do these multilateral engagements have bearing, one having a bearing on the other? What had happened at COP30, could that influence the manner in which the leaders could articulate the challenge of climate justice here in Johannesburg?
Yes. I think the answer is yes. There is a tremendous degree of coordination. Whatever is happening and the way consensus is proving elusive would be naturally reported to the delegations sitting in Johannesburg, and that will allow the advisors to advise the presidents and prime ministers on how to approach it. These are the ultimate authorities, so they can take a fresh approach as well. But the fact remains that both in the conference and outside the conference room in Belém and in Johannesburg, there are countries in the north which are really not willing to believe in this whole concept of environmental calamity that is hitting the world. And if they believe that it is not there, then they don't see any reason why they should be helping other countries for through finance and through transfer technology. So that is the central question, which means that the countries of the south will have to stand more and more on their own feet. And I think that self-reliance attitude is beginning to take place, and I think those developed countries which are still enlightened and willing to help, they will be brought in, and the rest will have to be handled by the global south as well. I think that is how I am looking at it.
Professor, if you were to talk about the tone and tenor and substance of the discussions likely to take place in Johannesburg over the next couple of days at the summit, what are some of the geopolitical issues that might figure in the discussions and also possibly in the joint statement or declaration, including the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the UNSC reform in particular, or even the West Asian crisis, the Middle East issue? What are your thoughts on some of these contentious issues that might find resonance over the next few days at the summit?
Yeah, I think given the fact that it is being done in South Africa, which is almost being boycotted by United States, a very important member, many issues are going to be contentious, going to be contested, and some of the things that India wants to convey there and wants to carry from its own summit will be non-controversial, because there was unanimity in the declaration at New Delhi, and that I think should be providing a point of convergence. But on issues, some of the issues that you pointed out, or the conflict issues like in Middle East, or some of the issues like this will be contested, and South Africa has a very strong position That will be again very strongly contested by many of the developed countries. So it could be a difficult negotiation on several issues, but there are issues which countries like India are projecting. We can find consensus on these issues because these are something that both developed countries and developing countries have agreed in the past, and they are also the core issues.
Please.
I just want to add that on West Asia now the situation has improved.
Right.
You know, with the US Gaza plan having been approved by the UN Security Council, I think much of the controversy, in my view, will be taken out and they will have to go along with the UN, especially because the two permanent members of the Security Council, Russia and China, did not use their veto and let it pass.
Right.
So that is something by way of a plus. On Ukraine, once again, you know, the peace process is on. Turkey and the US senior officials have been working on it, and suddenly once again there is a little bit of optimism. So in a way, especially with US absent from Johannesburg, maybe they won't spend too much time on Ukraine because they have not invited the president of Ukraine there. So that is what I would like to, but at later stage I would have some views to share on the India-Africa Forum Summit, but I'll leave it to you.
Sure, go ahead please.
Yeah.
Very briefly, I think I agree with Professor Dubey. You know, we the Africanists of this country have been disappointed.
Why do you say that?
10 years have gone and the fourth summit has not taken place, and I want to place on record that really here the African side has to show more interest, more excitement and more cooperation. India remains very strongly committed to the idea and we are hearing now that the fourth summit may take place next year in 2026. If it happens, it would be very good.
No, I asked you this, Ambassador, because African Union would be present, South Africa would be present, and India would be present too at Johannesburg. So, do you think talks could veer to the concept or the discussion on the next?
Yes, I very much hope so. I think already basic homework is being done. Prime Minister had gone, you remember, to Nigeria, and now President has just gone to Angola. By the way, Angola is the president of the African Union. So you are absolutely on the dot. I think behind the scene there would be an attempt to firm up the dates. In fact, India would be very happy to host this big summit again to convey that we are totally committed to Africa.
Right, and how have the ground realities of the continent also evolved over a period of time, Ambassador? The kind of inroads that China has made, economic investments that it has made, again, is a question of debt serviceability that is different, but is it a competitive space, the continent, as far as India and China?
It is very competitive, and in the past 10 years it has become even more competitive because China has had a bit of a run of the place with the US withdrawing from Africa and with Europe becoming too concentrated on European affairs itself. And India somewhat handicapped because the next summit could not take place. Yet India has continued to show interest in cooperation both at the bilateral level and at the regional level. But you need to have the third pillar, which is the continental level. And so I very much articulate the view of the Indian industry and business, Indian think tank community, I think most of the elements of Indian media as well, that we should continue to move forward with tangible action of cooperation between India and Africa.
Professor, if I were to take the question across to you, I mean, if you take a step back and look at the African continent as a whole, what would you like to see India be doing in the near term with Africa in terms of trade, investments, political ties, people-to-people ties, be it education or tourism? Do you have a wish list of sorts?
I think all the area that you pointed out has tremendous potentials for cooperation with African countries. Government of India is doing enough, but we know now this is a period of globalization, private sectors that has to go. So government can only do so much It cannot now, like in the Cold War period, do things itself. So by policy support is it trying to promote every area where Africans can take help of India's development in those areas. The wish list is something that is long, but the fact is that we are somehow not able also to execute most of the things that we commit to do. So execution is the first thing in my wish list if we want to promote our relationship, whatever we commit, whatever is agreed by political leadership, we must have mechanism that execute that. We need to move on that. Second thing is also the financial area. The developed countries had very strong financial control over these African countries. We need to promote our banking system and our media into Africa, where the people-to-people connect can also be promoted. Because even the track 2 right now that we see between India and Africa is not track 2, it's 1.1. So track 2 has to be really activated, where civil societies, where media, where academics needs to come together to bring India and Africa together.
Right, for the viewers who've just joined us, an update. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has reached South Africa. In a few moments from now, we should get those visuals of a special diaspora welcome for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Remember, Prime Minister had particularly mentioned that the Indian diaspora in South Africa happens to be one of the largest in the world, and that Prime Minister tomorrow and day after, the focus would be on participating in the G20 Summit. Ambassador Rajiv Kumar Bhatia and Professor Ajay Kumar Dubey continue to be with us. Our correspondent Amritpal Singh would also be joining us shortly live from Johannesburg. Ambassador Bhatia, we're looking at different areas in focus during Prime Minister's visit to South Africa, G20 in particular. How pervasive is the theme of emerging technologies going to be? We see the greater powers really scrambling in the race for rare earths, minerals which sort of energize the technology race in the world. There are many countries who also may find themselves being left behind. Just as there is a climate justice, could there be also a concept of technology justice? And in that spirit, what could G20 talk about?
Yes, in fact, this is one of the 4 top priorities of the presidency country, critical minerals and also artificial intelligence. Yes. So the issue here is that critical minerals is absolutely essential requirement for your phones, your EVs, your e-vehicles and other things that you need in 21st century, and there are only very few regions in the world where you actually can mine them and process them and then use them. Africa is one of them. And Africa, generally speaking, feels that it has been exploited. So what they are now essentially saying is that, look, we are willing to collaborate with the world, but the processing must take place on African continent. In the process, they create jobs for people, they enhance their technical skills, and also get some advantage, some benefit to the source of those minerals. So I think South Africa is in the leadership position there, and India would be very happy to cooperate with them. And similarly, when it comes to the advanced stages of information technology, particularly artificial intelligence, I think India has much to share with Africa. India is already now working very hard for a major conference next February, as you know, on artificial intelligence, AI conference. Summit, yeah. So there would be a kind of a meeting of minds there. In this, again, you need that absentee country as well. And you need certainly the cooperation of China. So it will be very interesting dynamics to see how the interests of Africa, Global South, India, the bigger powers, Europe, they all get decently and judiciously balanced. We will have to watch how they do it.
Indeed. Professor, looking at the Prime Minister's itinerary over the next couple of days in Johannesburg, are there any particular bilaterals that you would be keeping an eye out for?
Of course, in India, South Africa bilaterals will be very important. And also, I understand that the African Union will be represented over there. So there would be possibly meeting with the chairperson of the African Union Commission and several other leaders who will come and meet. But right now, I think with South Africa, it's going to be a fixed bilateral meeting.
Right. And Professor, just want to bring that technology question to you. Also, tentatively looking at the engagements of Prime Minister, he's also likely to meet NASPER's group chairman in one of the engagement. It happens to be one of the largest technology investors in operations in the world. So there does appear to be greater focus on the manner in which the technology landscape is being shaped in this visit.
Yes, I think one of the three area that the summit is focusing on, one of them is critical mineral and this AI technology. And that is going to be important because AI is going to be important and it has to be shared with several countries. Otherwise, there could be very serious repercussions. So the participation of developing world, global south in such a innovation is very important. So India is also a very important stakeholder into this. So technology and especially the AI digital technology is going to be important and going to be focused in this.
And talking about India's, sure, you want to come in?
That question was very important. I just wanted to give you about the meetings. From my perspective, I think two meetings would be very important. One which is taking place tonight, that is with the Australian PM, and the other is with the Japanese PM. You might ask as to what is the common thing, and it is the Quad. The Quad has 4 members, as we know, US, India, Australia and Japan. In this month, the Quad meeting was to be held, and then obviously it was shelved because US President was unable to come. So I think it will be very interesting for us to know as to how, apart from the bilateral relations, they think in terms of what to do with the situation that is emerging in the Indo-Pacific. So thinking beyond, Africa, it is global geopolitics that we have to look at, and it will be very interesting to see from the Indo-Pacific.
Ambassador, you refer to the Quad and the Indo-Pacific. So I have to ask you this. The construct of the Indo-Pacific in American mind ends on the western border of India, whereas our concept extends all the way up to the Horn of Africa and the southern Indian Ocean bordering the African continent. Why this discrepancy? And do you think India has valid reasons to have genuine concerns about the US commitment to the entire Indo-Pacific as we see it?
Yes, there is a serious mindset problem here. As you know, until about the last decade, Americans preferred to use Asia Pacific, which did not include India. When they started using Indo-Pacific, they said now this includes India. But for India, the important ocean is the Indian Ocean, even more important than the Pacific Ocean, because this is where our culture and our civilizational linkages grew. And therefore, I think Delhi has always very clearly defined Indo-Pacific from Kilimanjaro, which is a mountain in Tanzania, to California. It is a huge, vast region bordered by 2 seas, and this is what famous Prime Minister Abe had talked about, namely the confluence of the 2 seas. He spoke on this before the Indian Parliament. So we are quite clear that Japan and Australia are reasonably open to the Indian interpretation, whereas the US has been somewhat restrictive on this.
An ambassador with the concerns that one may have around the future of Quad vis-a-vis United States. Does the concern also extend to the future of the G20 as well? I mean, I also ask this question in the context of the kind of reactions that came in post the BRICS summit and what BRICS was seeking to do with the developing countries uniting their voices and their presence. The fact that American president is absent from this engagement. What is your sense of how does America look at the present America, the Trump's America, look at G20?
Well, you really have to ask experts on American affairs. I'm not one of them. The basic point is very clear. America is not in BRICS, but America is in G20. So for them, G20 is very important. And frankly, as a great advocate of G20, I was very happy the moment I read that US has decided to host the next summit in December 2026 in Miami.
In Trump's own
homeland
resort, yeah.
Exactly. So that means G20 has a set future. It will flourish under the American leadership. Obviously, American leadership will have its impact as all the other previous presidencies, Indonesia, India, Brazil and South Africa have had. And that is why next year probably will be the most interesting year to watch G20 as to how the global South tilted G20 harmonizes itself with the US-led G20.
Do you think by then the Russia-Ukraine conflict would have been resolved and we could see President Putin visit Miami as well?
Well, we are now really looking into the future, but on the first one, I'm an optimist. I feel that Ukraine war possibly is heading to the last phase. But will that lead all this to even a bigger détente between Moscow and Washington? I'm not in a position to say.
Professor Dubey, just to bring you that question as well. Before America takes over the presidency of the G20, I mean, the South African, the Johannesburg edition becomes all the more important. Fourth time that a global South country is hosting it, and therefore the outcome statement in many ways is going to be a culmination of what happened in the past three editions and now.
Yes, I think this will be very important because it will be a consolidated voice, agenda, issues, concern of the global South. Even when it takes place next year, United States, this cannot be completely ignored from the agenda. And the G20, which was seen earlier as a forum of relatively very developed countries after G7, this one will be also more representative, and the global South agenda will stay even when the G20 takes place under Trump.
Ambassador, I just want to shift the focus of our conversation slightly away from the summit and talk about your lived experience, having lived and worked in the African continent, in Kenya, in South Africa. Tell us a bit, if you will, about how perception of India has changed over the years since the time you were there and today. How has it changed? Is it for the better? How do African people, generally speaking, look at India, and what do they expect from India in the near term in terms of maybe technology or capacity building or in terms of education, healthcare and so on?
I think the change had begun to come when I went to Kenya, which was back in 1998. And then I went second time to South Africa, which was in 2006. So the turn of the century and then the first decade. We noticed at that time the thirst in Africa for collaboration with foreign economies, foreign powers, that is going beyond the US and Europe. I think there was a very strong perception that Africa was trying to reborn itself, was trying to do the renaissance. And that is where you remember a very enlightened president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, led the country. He was the second president of South Africa, and he played a role in creating the African Union. Before this, there was an older organization which had its limitations. So African Union was born at the turn of the century, and there was a great sense of optimism and confidence in Africa, and they felt that the destiny took them to the south, to countries such as China and India. And I, we used to work very closely. In those days, India-China relationship was also very good. So we used to compare notes all the time with Chinese diplomats, both in Kenya and in South Africa, and still influenced somewhat by the Bandung spirit of the 50s. Then, between then and now, which is now close to 15, 16 years, the change that has come is that while, as I mentioned, Europe and US have not moved forward very rapidly to capture the heart and soul of Africa, China did. And when China began, we also joined in. As Professor Dubey pointed out, our summit diplomacy between 2008 and 2015 was effective. We allocated more money. We started opening newer embassies. There was a real zing in South Bloc about dealing with Africa. And then, of course, other things happened, COVID, India-China border clash and the rest of it. It is in that context, I think it is not just a question of our craving for the next summit. I think the most important thing is really twofold. One, India has to set aside greater financial resources to promote the diplomacy with Africa. You cannot do it merely on rhetoric and on fine speeches. You need to back it with projects for which we have to pay money. Is no longer Africans are willing to take everything on credit. Right. They want a lot of other kind of help, grants and so on. And the second thing is, I think we need to really hear the voices of industry and business in this country and see what is holding them back and how we can smoothen their task and their path, so that, because the whole thing is, and this is my last sentence, Africa is the future. In 2050, Africa is going to be 25% of the world population. In 4 human beings, 1 will be African. So you can imagine the size of the market. They will need everything. They will need everything that we produce or may produce in future. Indeed. So we will ignore Africa only at our own peril.
Absolutely. Right. If Africa is said to be the future, Professor Ajay Kumar Dubey, therefore the African youths becomes a very important demographic unit. From your experiences in academia, if you could give us a sense of the manner in which India looks at studies, African studies, the many African students who come to India, there are opportunities for exchange, people-to-people exchange. From the work that you do, teaching students, engaging with them, help us get an idea of what is the level of engagement that the country, India and the African continent, the various African countries have, the level of academia to begin with.
I think in the past, there had been very good relationship between India and Africa. The historical goodwill is very strong. That historical goodwill came by 2 rallying points. One was decolonization and the anti-racial struggle in Africa. India supported wholeheartedly in all multilateral forums, bilaterally in all these activities. And during the Cold War period also, there was a very strong engagement of public sector for India in African development project. With globalization, with 21st century, there are new players like China, which has come with a bigger financial package for Africa. And countries like India needs to now develop other rallying points and agenda to connect with African countries, which is capacity building, diversity management, development management. These are the areas we need to do work with African countries. What is very important that since we don't have any public sector engagement being promoted, because it is now market-led economy that India has, African countries have, we need to promote private businesses over there. And we need to take them to different countries where we don't have much connect. As I said, our trade connect is only with 10 countries with 90% of our trade confined to them. They are also not preferring, very clearly saying, categorically stating time and again, we don't want so much of your credit line, we want more investment, more, as Ambassador Bhatia says, more grants, rather than the credit line which the sovereign guarantee has to be given. So I think we need to promote our major private sector, ensuring that the multinationals of the South perform in a different way compared to the multinationals of the North. And there are several guidelines and possibility which we can incorporate. Because if they don't do it in pharmaceutical and some other areas, we have seen that there had been some issues, and that needs to be handled. And this current rallying point will be to take the experiences, money and technology of our private sector to Africa through investment channel rather than through the guidelines that we have.
Ambassador Bhatia, if I can just bring that point to you. We understand that capacity building has been one of India's strengths as far as development engagement with many partner countries are concerned. In South Africa, in the African continent at large, from your experience, how diverse has been our engagement with the people in the continent?
Well, you know, the design is to really keep it diverse in terms of geographical regions, in terms of you know, other compositions. But what is preventing us is the scale. You know, the needs there are so big that if we are able to give 100 or 200 slots, probably they need 1,000 or 2,000 slots. And that is where, you know, as both of us are saying, more money is required. But not just more money, you also need to raise your capacity back home as well. And of course, on top of that, I must raise a very sensitive issue, but in a very amiable manner, which is that sometimes we are not able to you know, provide the best possible attitude and treatment to our friends from Africa. I think things have improved a great deal, but once in a while we keep hearing these
Could you
reports.
elaborate on that point? What exactly do you have in mind when you say that?
No, sometimes, you know, African people, when they come on a visit to India, they do not get you know, proper treatment. And there is a sense of inequality or sense of discrimination. But that is only because of you know, inadequate education. I think the more our universities and our institutions are able to convey to our youth that Africa is no longer a dark continent. Africa is a continent of 55 countries. Many of them are developing very well. They speak English, they speak French, they speak Portuguese, they speak all kinds of languages, and they have massive, extensive linkages with Latin America, with Europe, with Southeast Asia. So, in that context, as Prasar Dubey is saying again and again, the history of close India-Africa relations need to be leveraged.
Right.
I think it is very important for our youth, our generation Z, to read a bit about Africa, to learn about Africa, and say why Doordarshan today is so excited about Prime Minister being in South Africa. By the way, this is, I think, his 4th or 5th visit. He was there in 2016 on a bilateral visit. He was there in 2018 and 2023, I think, for BRICS Summit, and now he is there for I mean, he obviously loves to go to South Africa, and he has been to Africa many times. I think, if I am not mistaken, no other Indian Prime Minister has been to Africa as much as the present Prime Minister.
Indeed.
And as a result, also there has been coordination. So, our President and our Vice President also have been regular visitors to the continent. We must ask why. It is only because we believe, our leadership believes, that India-Africa relationship has a big future.
And many of these aspirations, Ambassador, that you mentioned perhaps cannot be fulfilled by any one partner countries. And because we're talking about the G20 and South Africa is hosting the G20, then do you think it also becomes then the larger multilateral agenda of this summit? Justice for Africa, meeting its aspirations and needs in the years ahead?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have to scale up things. We have to scale up. We have about, I think, $100 billion of trade. The target is $200 billion of trade. To reach that, we will need to raise the public consciousness, to expand these studies, to extend the think tank and academic linkages. Certainly ask our captains of business and industry, what is holding you back? Tell us how we can help you, and the government will come forward and help. And government has to produce a lot of money.
But can the industry, on that point, can the industry take initiative on its own? Why rely always, as Professor was mentioning, rely on the government to take the initiative?
Because there are risks in Africa. I cannot, out of my passion for Africa, conceal the fact that there are risks. There are, sometimes coups, government change, the laws and regulations are. So you need to handhold your own people. They are willing to invest money, but they don't want to throw the money. Therefore, the Chinese model is exactly the same. Chinese government is fully involved in Chinese industries' penetration into Africa. We need to work together.
Indeed. Professor, among the likely issues that will be discussed at the summit is UN reform in general and UN Security Council reform in particular. In the meantime, Professor, I'll come back in just a bit. We are getting some more visuals from Johannesburg of the Prime Minister's visit to South Africa for the G20 Summit. A special prayer was recited by children, and after that, almost 11 different classical dances were presented to him. Now, classical dances from the states of Assam, Odisha, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, and West Bengal.
Visuals of a very special welcome accorded to Prime Minister Narendra Modi as he reached South Africa. The visuals coming in from Johannesburg hotel hosting Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And those celebrations, those welcome had very interesting, colorful glimpses of Indian culture. Special prayers, dance performances presented to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Little children presenting special prayers. We're playing out those visuals. Very special, colourful, musical welcome accorded to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Performances from different cultures in India, different states was presented to Prime Minister. Special prayer also by children of Indian and African descent who together presented special prayers for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Those visuals that you're looking at, colourful dance performances to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia, while we looking at these visuals for a welcome accorded to Prime Minister Modi, just want to return to that idea that Prime Minister mentioned that South Africa is home to one of the largest Indian diaspora. From your experiences, if you could share with us, what has been the lived experience of the Indian diaspora in South Africa like, and will other countries in the continent be able to relate to these visuals of cultural celebration of India?
Oh yes, I think when it comes to the Indian diasporic communities on the continent, they do have a very common thread, which is they are remembering their cultural roots, their languages, their religion, their dances. And this is a very nice way. In fact, as we all know, wherever Prime Minister goes,
right.
This is an essential part of the program. It really, first of all, provides a lot of color and song and dance and music, and it conveys how happy the local people are. After all, how much can you otherwise do by giving a long speech of welcome?
True. Right.
So this is something. And second thing, there is a very useful thing which you have also stressed in your commentary, that in a way we are connecting the young people, back to their homeland India. So look at these are teenagers, or a little bit more than teenagers. They are chanting mantras. They are presenting classical dances. They are into their colorful Indian costume. And this has become now, again, for the majority community, the Africans, something which they are very used to. The Indian culture, song and dance, but also food, the cuisine. This is another, now if we visit Durban, for example, which one used to do from time to time, there are certain dishes which is a kind of a mixture of the African and Indian cuisine, which are very popular. And not just among the Indian diaspora community, but Africans themselves. They're perfectly happy to eat, fairly spicy food, which otherwise would not really agree with them. So I would say that if the idea of visits like this, a VVIP visit like this, is not just to connect the governments, but connect
Peoples
the people.
Exactly.
This is the P2P connection
Indeed.
that the visits promote. In every major VVIP visit, I don't know whether it happens in other countries' case, but in our case, this is a wonderful thing, part of the agenda, cultural and people-to-people connection.
But would you say that's also because the kind of diaspora heritage that India has, Indians living abroad, doing well in different parts of the world, is also unique in our character, in our engagement with the world?
Yes, I think we would be in good company like Israel, Lebanon, China, a few other countries, but certainly we are very proud of our diaspora's spread.
And the good thing is Indian diaspora assimilates very well into the local communities. So they contribute to the society they live in. So they don't have this concept of ghettoization or so they integrate well into the societies that they live in.
Yes, and talking in case of South Africa, we also have to remember they played a role in the liberation and the ending of the racial discrimination policies of the government. They were in the forefront.
True.
Some of the major lieutenants of Nelson Mandela were Indians, and so that and of course the Mahatma Gandhi connection really makes South Africa in particular and the entire continent as a very special thing. I remember when I went, Dr. Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister, and before I went to South Africa, he paid a visit, and I was watching it sitting as ambassador to Mexico, and wondering as to when ever an Indian PM will come to Mexico, little knowing that next time Dr. Manmohan Singh comes to visit South Africa, I will be the High Commissioner there. So I think you feel very much at home there. It's a very beautiful country, green, clean, fairly developed, and in fact, if you look at Johannesburg and Cape Town, these are the well kept secret. They are almost like European cities, except the security issue. So it's very interesting, and South Africans are masters in organizing these big events. For the social summit which preceded this conference, the Johannesburg summit, 5,000 people were invited to attend it. And in a country where electricity supply was a problem, they just took charge, and there is no problem of electricity supply for the conference and other things. So things are improving there.
Indeed. Professor, when we talk about bilateral ties, one tends to always harp on or go back to hard power in terms of trade, investments, military, defense and security, but soft power also plays a role in equal importance, right? India's soft power in this case? Right, as we watch these visuals of artists performing in honor of Prime Minister Modi, Professor Dubey, if you're still with us, I meant to ask you about the role of soft power, India's soft power as a diplomatic tool to further India's ties with South Africa and the African continent. Your thoughts on how it can play an equally important role, say, as compared to hard power in terms of trade, investments, or defense and security?
Power, we have a competitive edge in South Africa itself. We have a very substantial and large Indian diaspora. It is one of the largest in the region. And this is also a diaspora which was received very well in South Africa in terms of fighting against the apartheid system, in terms of working together to establish a democratic South Africa. It's also part of what we know now as traditionally disadvantaged community, and Indians are counted as black in terms of positive discrimination policies. And they maintain their Indianness, which is very important for us. Prime Minister Modi has an engagement with Indian diaspora globally wherever he goes. But it's very important in South Africa, as I was saying earlier, that from 1946 till 1994, this is the only diaspora which is so big, which was totally cut off from India in terms of maintaining our, not just the diplomatic and economic ties, but any of the cultural ties. And it remained completely out of Indian reach out. So it is important that this soft power that we have in country like South Africa, which is more advanced in terms of education and professional knowledge than the white population over there, we should connect in a way that it promotes our overall bilateral relation with South Africa. I remember when the LM Singh committee went to South Africa initially to map Indian diaspora over there, all these Indian diaspora leaders, including the black community leaders, political leaders, told Indian delegation that diaspora is not on the table. But since now South Africa itself has launched several policies to engage its own diaspora globally, and the diaspora globally has become a resource, they are also open to have this Indian diaspora engage with India. I was in 2010 for Mini India PBD Summit, which happened in Durban. It was just one-day summit. And our Minister for Pravasi, he was there. And at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we got a call that President Juma wants to come uninvited to participate in that summit, not summit, that Mini Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. And he came and he said that whatever happened in the past, as far as Indian diaspora and India was concerned, I want to place Indian diaspora as a link between India and South Africa. When he came to India in his first visit, he brought in 2 plane loads of CEOs of Indian origin and told the Indian government that, look, these are your people. Why don't you connect with them and use them as a bridge between India and South Africa to promote our bilateral relation in many areas. So it is an important soft power which we need to leverage more and more.
Right. Ambassador, while we're looking at those very special visuals of cultural welcome, one of the areas of engagement between India and the African continent, also G20's priorities for Africa, is the health sector. Given the development challenges in the continent in various parts, health issues have been of key priority. We understand that India's health intervention has been, over the years, quite diverse. A few years ago, perhaps such a packed audience would not be possible when the pandemic hit. India helped out developing countries with vaccines and other such aid. Going forward, how do you see this engagement gaining more strength, especially digital health infrastructure and other innovations that India today is bringing?
And possibly medical tourism as well.
Yeah.
A lot of African nationals come to India.
Yes. So this health sector cooperation is now quite well established, and it began well before the COVID period. You remember HIV, when this was a very big challenge in Africa. India came out and produced you know, the medicines and drugs that were necessary at a real cheap reduced rate, and that helped. So the affordability was very much there. I think you know, you had asked earlier, Ramesh, about African perceptions, and I think generally educated Africans know quite well that when it comes to health sector and when it comes to technology sector, they need to turn to India, because they know that you know, in the smallest of the villages in Africa, in many regions, Indian medicines are available, and they are very affordable, and that really makes a big thing. And with all these regulations, etc., prices have come down with deregulation. So I would say that that is one aspect which is really reaching out to everybody. And as you also gently pointed out, India has become a major center for medical tourism. So the people who are more, you know, who are better off, they do often find there are certain, and one of the major opposition leaders in Kenya actually was here under treatment.
That's right.
When he expired, but they were all very grateful that right till the end he was looked after.
And incidentally, he preferred Ayurvedic treatment, not the traditional
so
you know,
that
modern
shows
medicine.
all the diversity is there. I think we need to push that even more. And of course, technology we have talked about. I think our own lives have become so much simpler because of UPI and the rest of it.
The digital public infrastructure.
Yes, and that needs to be taken to.
And I'm talking about healthcare with that, which Shubhendu mentioned. Do we know about the status of the Pan-Africa telemedicine projects? I mean, how is it coming along, and are we sort of reinventing?
That began very well, and then they had reinvented, and they had tried to do this. I am afraid I do not know what is the present position there. We are not reading much about it, but in many ways now that digital revolution has gone to the next step. I think we need to very much take it into financial and medical and other sectors as well.
Professor Ajay Dubey, India on many occasions has offered its expertise in various domains, particularly the sort of achievements it has made in digital public infrastructure and those models it has presented to the developing world, to the global south in particular. Whether directly or through the G20 forum, how do you see the significance of DIP, digital DPI in particular, and what kind of role can it play in South Africa and a larger continent of Africa?
I think it can play important role, and India is trying to promote its digital platforms into several countries. It is part of many of these Indian bilateral and multilateral meetings in Africa, and this is being well received in African countries. South Africa itself is important from this point of view also, but in many areas South Africa is also a developed economy. As Mr. Bhatia was saying, many areas they compete with us, and for example, the e-network project that we have under President Abdul Kalam was not accepted by South Africa as such, because they thought, no, we can manage things ourselves. But many other countries, our telecommunications and our e-platforms are being appreciated, and hopefully they will be implemented in countries like Mauritius. It has been done effectively, and we hope many other African countries are going to use our digital platforms.
Indeed. Ambassador, one other issue that we've discussed, briefly touched upon in the conversation, was about Prime Minister Modi's catchphrase of reform multilateralism in the context of UN reform and UNSC reform in particular. Is there a consensus within Africa as to which African countries would want to see themselves become an integral part of a reformed UN Security Council?
There is no consensus as far as African candidature for 2 seats of the Security Council is concerned. The agreement which was reached is only that 2 seats would be kept for Africa. This is the bone of contention, and we never of course get to that stage because the great powers, the permanent members of UN Security Council don't agree unreservedly to the idea of the expansion. So, the story goes on, but that does not mean that countries such as India would give up. The whole purpose and the strategy is to keep up the pressure, keep pushing for it, even though in the immediate future and especially now with divisions in the international community, obviously the pace of reform would be slow, but there is a genuine case. I think the central case is expressed in one central point, which is that this is not 1945. In 2025, the world is completely changed in terms of power dynamics, in terms of economy, in terms of strategic importance.